I would like to invite this really, really pretty lady who is a neuro leadership coach and an internal family system coach and has got a beautiful smile and composure. Today, she'll be talking about quintessential leadership tools in crisis and beyond. She is none other than Eva Maria Scheidt from Germany. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give her a great round of applause. Hi, Eva.
Hello,
How are you doing?
good. I'm great.
You look
Super
pretty.
excited.
So, this floor is handed over to you.
Uh, Thank you so much. Let me get started with my presentation. So, yeah, quintessential leadership tools in crisis and beyond, topic for today. Really glad to have you all here. And I think it's going to add to what we've seen earlier, and it's going to come in nicely. So, my tool set includes a few tools, of which three of the most favorable I'm going to share today. So I'm going to take you through a journey through brain rules, intrinsic motivation, and self-leadership. And to start out, I would like to make yourself a mental note, or maybe you can also add that in the chat, which of these situations actually resonate most with you. And I've been through all of them. Maybe you know some of them yourself. So that one question starting at the top right here, why do some of the high performers that are in your team run into burnout? And what, as their leader, can you do about it? I've seen people in my team do that. I've been working remotely a lot, so I may not have been able to meet my team in time or face to face more than once a year. And it was difficult, but I also see that in other leaders that actually meet their people frequently, maybe on a weekly basis, and they still don't see it coming. Or maybe you've seen a situation like you're taking a wrong turn at the intersection, you're going somewhere and you have some very difficult discussion with the person on the passenger seat, and all of the sudden you're turning the right direction, you're going someplace where you usually turn, but not where you want to go in that moment. So the brain cannot do both, right? It cannot do multitasking. And when you are having that difficult situation, your maybe your driver brain goes into autopilot and it's just taking you where it's used to go as an autopilot. And then there is this thing on volunteering and contributing to open source. People do it. I mean, you see people uh, on the weekends doing great stuff, and you wonder how come they're not bringing that energy to the workplace. Which leads to the question of how can I improve employee engagement in my team, even either as a leader or from within, or if you're a project leader and you don't really actually lead people in a direct management line, you may still be leading them um, as a project lead. And then we have this multitasking thing, and Arun said it earlier, right? Mindfulness, be here, listen. Don't get one of these 60,000 thoughts that hunt your brain each day. Come in between listening and doing something. Um, Multitasking is not working. It happens to me a lot in sessions like these when I just miss that one point I wanted to be here for. Then, of course, we have the deadlines that are coming and we're getting a bit frantic, or people around you get frantic. Or maybe you're also in a new building, you want to go to a meeting, you have a presentation, and then someone calls you escalating something on the phone to you, and you end up being late because you get lost and you need to take another escalator to get where you actually wanted to go. Happens to me. So no escalation calls on the way to a difficult and to an important meeting. And that other question of how do you make actually receiving and giving feedback enjoyable? We've seen some of that earlier also in the sessions. Looking at the employee engagement in the team, um, lots of disengagement in the workplace, and kudos to a lady called Catherine Garner for this beautiful illustration. You have the 10 people in a boat. One has all the work of rowing in the right direction. Two are actually going the other way. The Gallup Engagement Index is an index that is done every year across the world, and this is actually also reflecting the workforce in Germany. So how do you actually get everybody rowing, right? You want all the green, everyone going the right direction. And it's a difficult thing to do. So looking at the brain, as I say, I have 3 tools here today. So we have the brain, and we all hear about leading with the head and the heart. So which part of the head are you actually going to be looking at here? So we heard the water, the deer at the water earlier. Um, let's look at where that moment exists. Is the limbic brain. You see that on the right hand side pictured. It's a fight, flight, freeze response. It's a stress response. And often we are in a fight, flight, freeze response. We may not be aware of it. So we're actually not behaving with our full potential. People are thinking, am I safe here? Do people want me here? The emotions come. Like I'm easily startled. So when there's a strange noise next to my ear or maybe a bit further, I just freeze for a moment until I realize, oh, it's nothing. It's just someone was dropping a box. Nothing, right? But still my brain goes into freeze for those few seconds. And then I need to kind of get back to normal thinking, which is in the prefrontal cortex, has the executive function. And there's multiple functions that live here: the empathy, the insight, the flexibility of the response, the regulation of emotions, also body regulation, breathing, morality, intuition, but also attuned communication and the modulation of that fear that we have from the limbic brain. Now, how is that relevant to being at work? I'll come to that in a second. What is important to know is the amygdala reacts really faster and stronger. It's always that first reaction, fight, flight, freeze. And it's a survival instinct. It avoids the risks and threats, and it's always looking for rewards. Maybe that's also why sometimes addiction come in easy, because it's a reward, right? And the prefrontal cortex is actually switched off when the amygdala is firing. It can be switched on counting to 2, like my example earlier. I'm easily startled. Okay, counting to 2. Okay, nothing happened. I'm safe. And then the brain can go on again. But every brain is differently. It's wired differently. And maybe sometimes it takes a moment longer to actually get back to that executive function. The survival instinct in the brain avoids risks and threats, and it looks for rewards. And there is a model which has 5 domains of human social experience, and those 5 domains are status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So when you think of the acronym SCARF, it's like something that you can put to have some more warmth around your neck. So status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And the status thing is the drive we feel to stand out from the crowd. So think about where status for you is important. Um, what is really important to you to stand out from the crowd? Certainty, we like to understand our surroundings. The autonomy, we would like to feel a sense of control. Um, So even in small decisions, do you have actually 2, 3 options to choose from, which is already improving your sense of control in a certain situation? And relatedness, are you in group, are you out group, right? Humans drive boundaries around their groups, and it's always very important to know, am I in or am I out? And the sense of fairness meaning we are feeling a sense of equality and equity in social interactions. So all of these you can actually have in the workplace, and you can have a threat response from them, and you can have a reward response from them. So when you are looking at the threat response, you have items like verbal attacks or just critical comments. For some people, already meeting the boss is a threat response. And so maybe that boss is not really sensible to what you need to have a safe environment at work. So meeting the boss, some of them is already sufficient. And then you have items like rumors or vague targets on the certainty angle. Or let's assume someone is just saying, oh, we are going to reorganize this whole thing. And then for 2 months, you hear nothing. So everyone gets really nervous, and rumors start spreading, and you can see the threat responses. It's also about strong control, massive competition, or ignoring the interests and missing empathy. So this is what I was just talking about, right? You have the threat response where it can come from and the reward response where it can come from. Next, please. And so this is brain rules. Two aspects, right? You have the limbic brain, you have the executive function, and you have a model that's called SCARF that you can actually use to think through how a certain communication or how your behavior as a leader may actually influence your people. If we move to the intrinsic motivation angle, the second tool I'm bringing today, and if you can go next. So the intrinsic motivation, you have there's another model, kind of a meta study on motivators. We heard about external motivators today, intrinsic motivators. And money is not part of the intrinsic motivators. Of course, there should be sufficient money in your pocket to not worry each day that you can have food and shelter and all of that. But then the intrinsic motivators is what get really people out of bed in the morning. So here we have a set of 10, which is acceptance, curiosity, honor, mastery, order, freedom, status, goal, power, and relatedness. And how I use these tools is actually when you talk with someone to see what are your top three. So take a moment to make your mental note, like what are your top three internal intrinsic motivators? And be aware they may be changing, right? You may have some that are correct for work. You may have some that are in your voluntary engagement, and you may have some at home in your family when you're raising your kids. They can be different, right? And sometimes when people are really out of character at work or kind of like playing a role that's not them, you will also see how these motivators get in their way by each other. You can also take it to actually see how motivation changes, like in a crisis situation. If I look at myself, maybe before the COVID-19, maybe my top three were a bit different from how they are today, right? So I need to flex to adapt to the crisis. And I, for example, realized that relatedness, last year I realized it's really important for me and I really wanted to meet more people. I have been managing in an international environment remotely. I've not been able to see my people and I actually took a decision. I want to work closer with people that I actually can meet in a room, and now we are in that situation where I'm again mobile and online. So while I wanted to move up to my relatedness motivator, now I needed to adapt again. And it's different now than before because now everyone is going online. So it's actually more easy for me and having that relatedness. This is just a personal example of how it may influence. I've also used it to explain conflicts. So if you move on, next slide. This is an example of a discussion I had with one of my clients at the end of a project where we were discussing these top three motivators of himself and of his team. And the funny thing was that he said, I come from I just joined this company and where I was working before when we had a red project or we are going up to the deadline and it wasn't getting finished, we just exerted power and pressure. And then people, they just did it. And at the end, there was honor and mastery and we were able to actually get it through. But in this team I'm leading now, I use that same approach. It's getting me nowhere because I realize they all are a big family. They're related to each other. They want their freedom. They take their own decisions. They don't really care how I want them to decide. And they have a high level of need for acceptance. So he realized using these motivators that actually the way of managing red stuff earlier just didn't get to any result in this situation where he was now. And you can also look at, okay, you get two people in a conversation, and if those motivations are really not matching, then you'll be in big trouble. Next, please. So this is the motivation thing that I really started to love to see how interaction can go. And now self-leadership is the last one. So next, please. In the self-leadership, again, I have some examples. And again, see which one is resonating with you, either in the chat or take your personal note if you don't want to share. Maybe you are experiencing the same situation or reaction over and over again. You really want to play it differently, but somehow you can't help it. It's always that one reaction that you don't want to have. Or maybe you are saying, I'm actually not like this after such a situation. This wasn't me. Somehow, this isn't me. Or you wonder why certain members of your team or of your family always end up in the same fight. You see it coming, but somehow they have that pattern and they just can't stop it. Or you have these two voices in your head, sometimes arguing about, yeah, let's do that. No, you can't do this. Yeah, why not take some risk? No, it's not safe. So these type of situations, and self-leadership, the tool here is really helpful with that. Next, please. So in the way we look, the idea here is that there is a concept of parts, and parts develop over time. You can look at it like an inner team, or you can look at it's like a small and medium company, and you can't really fire anyone. You have a marketing person, you have a data protection person, you have a seller, you have a master of the trade, you have someone who wants to learn. Maybe you have one who's really like just tired and wants to relax. So you can see representations of that on the left-hand side here with all these parts and characters that are maybe in consciousness or maybe just not very conscious to you. And you have that living room. It's right now, it's empty. But imagine one of those situations you heard me talk about earlier, that reaction when someone is triggering, and then that one character comes into the living room, takes the full space, the full stage, and you can't, that's it. That's that situation. So when we look at this concept, we see that there's different types of parts. There's parts that are protecting. There's a part that made me show up here, made me practice this presentation yesterday. Um, you know, get up in the morning. But there's also parts maybe that are exiled. Some parts that I don't really like so much, and I try to like lock them somewhere. Thing is, even when we lock some of these parts and we don't want to know much about them, they're still here. And so this concept is they're still, working in the background. So one of the core angles of this concept is all of these parts are welcome. So like in that small, medium-sized company, you can't fire them and they will always be there. Next slide, please. And let's talk through one situation. I take one of a partnership here, but I think many discussions at workplace are in the same angle. So what you can see here is two blue chairs, and you can see two heads. You can't see the body, you just can see the heads. But you can see these protecting parts in the front. The guy is in the armor of, in armor, in tin. And the woman, she's like telling that armored guy what should be done next, which is also not a very kind way of talking. So the protectors of these get triggered, and you can see the small child, the girl and the boy. So maybe exiled parts, maybe they have been in a very difficult situation where their parent was telling them what to do, or the school teacher or whoever. Maybe also in the peer group, kids amongst each other are also very much fighting. So it could be, one of those. And then these feelings get activated. Next, please. And then they get in the way of that discussion that you actually want to have. And what the self-leadership approach is doing, it helps you to become curious about these parts, get to know them, not just go on autopilot like, oh, my tin man is coming. No, okay, my tin man gets triggered. What happened? Let's have a look. Let's get to know that tin man, or whichever other part will come. And then next, please. And if you have done that work, you will see that you can actually have an adult conversation. The partners are in self. They
What?
know that they have these parts. And then you can have that conversation you actually showed up for, to have an adult conversation on whichever topic you want to discuss. Next, please. So if you look at, I brought a set of parts here. Who's talking? Who's listening? Yeah. I really love the one in the middle here. The two where you see that the guy who's steaming from his ears, right? So maybe really get triggered. And when he's calm, he's just like a protector. He's just like standing there like, no, you're not going to get your way here. This is me, I put my boundary. So this is one of the ways of looking at it. So everyone has like 10, 15 of these, and you can have your own illustration. And some of them may want to transform to new roles. Maybe you think, yeah, I have this part, but it's actually not helping me to lead a good life. And you can get to know these parts, your parts. You can help them transform into something that may be suiting you better. But again, don't lock them away. They're all welcome. They're all part of you. And that's what you need to encompass. Next, please. So when you are in self, and you saw these two adults earlier in the chairs, the 8 C's of self, you have calmness, curiosity, clarity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, and connectedness. So if you can feel all of those with meditation or just knowing your parts, whichever way gets you there, this is when you can be that relaxed person. So this is my set: brain rules, intrinsic motivation, self-leadership. And then what is your next step on that? And if you want to talk more about it, next slide, you can actually reach out to me, book a complimentary session here uh, in this calendar tool, and we can have a one-on-one chat on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. That was a really nice session.